Most people go through life waiting for opportunities, hoping things will fall into place and believing that if they stay kind, humble, and patient, everything will eventually work out. But history shows us a much harsher truth. The world doesn't reward the passive. It rewards the bold, the cunning, and the strategic. This is exactly why Niccolò Machiavelli's ideas continue to strike nerves centuries after he wrote The Prince. His words are blunt, uncomfortable, even ruthless, but they contain a raw clarity about how power works and how people truly operate. The video. This will create a mentality monster. Machiavelli takes these hard truths and reframes them into something modern. Not just political advice for princes, but a playbook for anyone who wants to develop an unshakable mindset. A mentality monster is not simply someone who works hard, it's someone who plays life, like chess, who understands perception, influence, and timing better than everyone else. It's about refusing to be naive and learning how to move through the world with precision, strength, and unbreakable will. This video will break down the philosophy behind connecting Machiavelli's core principles to modern life. We'll explore what it really means to be feared versus loved, how adaptability is the key to survival, and why perception often matters more than truth. Along the way, we'll see how these ideas apply not only to leaders and politicians, but to athletes, entrepreneurs, creators, and anyone determined to stand out in a world that rewards predators more than prey. By the end, you'll see why cultivating a Machiavellian mentality isn't about being cruel. It's about being prepared, resilient, and unstoppable. 1. Machiavelli's core ideas. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince in the 16th century as a brutally honest handbook for rulers navigating the chaos of Italian politics. What set him apart was his rejection of idealism. He wasn't concerned with how leaders should behave. He focused instead on how they must behave if they wanted to survive. For Machiavelli, morality took a back seat to practicality. Survival, influence, and results were what mattered most. His most famous ideas cut directly against traditional notions of virtue. For example, Machiavelli argued that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved if they cannot be both. Love is fragile, dependent on the goodwill of others, while fear is within the ruler's control. He also stressed that appearances often matter more than reality. A ruler doesn't have to be virtuous, they only need to appear virtuous to maintain trust and influence. This recognition of perception as power is one of his most enduring lessons. Another key principle is adaptability. Machiavelli understood that fortune, or fortuna, governs much of human life, but he insisted that leaders could shape their destiny by being bold and flexible. Success comes not to the rigid or naive, but to those who can read the moment and adjust their strategy. This combination of realism, adaptability, and attention to perception makes Machiavelli's work feel modern, even in today's hyper-competitive world. 2. The video's framing mentality monster. The video takes Machiavelli's cold political wisdom and reframes it as personal empowerment. Instead of telling rulers how to conquer kingdoms, it tells ordinary people how to conquer themselves and their environment. The mentality monster is someone who refuses to be weak-minded, someone who takes Machiavelli's harsh realism and uses it to carve out strength in an unpredictable world. The framing matters because most self-help content leans heavily on positivity, optimism, and affirmations. This video is the opposite. It doesn't try to comfort the viewer, it challenges them. It says bluntly, if you want to win in life, you must accept harsh truths. People will betray you, appearances will mislead, and kindness alone won't protect you. A mentality monster isn't surprised by these realities. They're prepared for them. This transformation of Machiavelli into a modern motivational tool works because it gives people permission to be tough. Instead of feeling guilty about being strategic or assertive, the viewer learns that strength is necessary. Life is not a level playing field, and those who build mental toughness are the ones who thrive. The video doesn't glorify cruelty, but highlights calculated strength, which is why its message resonates so deeply. 3. Strategy and adaptability. One of Machiavelli's strongest teachings is the importance of adaptability. He warned rulers not to rely on the same strategies forever, because the world is constantly changing. What works in times of peace might fail in times of war. What earns loyalty today might invite rebellion tomorrow. In his view, success belongs to those who can read the environment and shift accordingly. In a modern context, adaptability is the lifeblood of resilience. Consider athletes who must adjust their playing style after an injury, entrepreneurs who pivot their business models in response to market shifts, or creators who reinvent themselves to stay relevant. Each example demonstrates that rigidity is weakness. To be a mentality monster means embracing constant change, not fearing it. It's about seeing obstacles not as dead ends, but as challenges to outthink. The video reinforces this lesson by emphasizing the futility of complaining about unfairness. The world won't bend to your preferences, you must bend to reality without breaking. Adaptability doesn't mean compromising your principles, it means having the intelligence and discipline to shift tactics when necessary. This capacity to adjust without losing focus is one of the key traits of a mentality monster. 4. Fear, respect, and influence. Machiavelli's most controversial idea is his claim that it is safer to be feared than loved. On the surface, this sounds harsh, even cruel, but the logic is clear. Love depends on others' emotions, which are fickle and unreliable. Fear, however, creates predictability. People who fear consequences are less likely to betray or challenge authority. Applied to modern life, this principle doesn't mean terrorizing others, it means cultivating respect. Fear, in this context, is really about boundaries and strength. A leader, coach, or parent who commands respect through discipline and consistency is more reliable than one who seeks approval and love. A mentality monster doesn't beg for validation. They project authority through their actions, making others think twice before crossing them. In the workplace, sports, or personal life, this translates into a posture of strength. Colleagues respect the person who stands firm under pressure, not the one who tries to please everyone. Friends trust the person who is reliable, not the one who bends to every demand. The video reinterprets Machiavelli's statement not as cruelty, but as a reminder that real strength earns respect, and respect lasts longer than fleeting affection. 5. Perception as reality. One of Machiavelli's sharpest insights is that appearances often matter more than reality. People judge leaders not by their private character, but by how they present themselves. A ruler who appears virtuous and confident is more effective than one who is genuinely good but seems weak or indecisive. The video extends this to personal life. In a world dominated by social media, perception is currency. People build careers, influence, and opportunities not necessarily because they are the most talented, but because they manage their image with precision. Being a mentality monster means understanding that how you are seen shapes the opportunities you receive. You don't need to show every weakness, you need to project confidence and competence, even when struggling internally. This doesn't mean living a lie. It means mastering presentation, just as athletes psych out opponents with body language or entrepreneurs pitch ideas. With unshakable confidence, everyday people can control how others perceive them. To ignore this lesson is to remain naive, but to master it is to unlock influence. 6. Real-world mentality monsters. History is full of figures who embodied the mentality monster mindset. Leaders like Winston Churchill, who steered Britain through World War II, showed relentless toughness in the face of disaster. Athletes like Michael Jordan became legends not only because of skill, but because of their ruthless competitiveness and refusal to be broken mentally. Entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs turned vision into reality by demanding excellence and never settling for mediocrity. Each of these individuals demonstrates Machiavelli's lessons in action. They weren't always loved. In fact, many were criticized, feared, or even hated. But they commanded respect, maintained control over their image, and adapted when circumstances demanded it. They didn't simply survive, they dominated their fields. In today's world, we see the same mindset in influencers who reinvent themselves, in CEOs who make tough decisions under pressure, and in soldiers or athletes who thrive under adversity. The mentality monster is not bound to one field. It is a universal archetype of strength and resilience. 7. Ethical considerations. The danger of Machiavelli's philosophy is that it can be misused. Some interpret his writings as permission to manipulate, exploit, or dominate others without conscience. But the video emphasizes that becoming a mentality monster isn't about cruelty. It's about preparedness. It's about playing the game of life with awareness instead of ignorance. Ethics come into play when deciding how far to push Machiavellian principles. Using them to build resilience, influence, and adaptability can empower you. Using them to deceive or harm others corrodes trust and destroys long-term success. Even Machiavelli himself warned that cruelty should be measured and purposeful, not reckless. The key is balance. A mentality monster doesn't waste energy on manipulation for its own sake. They use strategy to protect themselves, achieve goals, and stand firm in a competitive world. When guided by discipline rather than selfishness, Machiavellian thinking becomes a tool for growth rather than destruction. 8. Mental toughness practices. Philosophy is meaningless without application, and the video highlights practical ways to cultivate the mentality monster mindset. First is discipline. Strength comes from consistency, waking up early, pushing through workouts, sticking to routines even when motivation fades. Discipline makes toughness automatic. Second is emotional control. Machiavelli noted that rulers must master their emotions to avoid appearing weak or impulsive. The same applies today. Emotional outbursts, whether anger or despair, hand power to others. A mentality monster feels deeply, but chooses responses carefully, using self-control as armor. Finally, calculated risk-taking is essential. Playing it safe guarantees mediocrity, while reckless gambles lead to ruin. The key is boldness backed by strategy. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers to act decisively when the moment was right, modern warriors of the mind must learn when to strike, when to hold back, and when to adapt. These practices transform ideas into habits, forging toughness over time. 9. Criticisms and limitations. Not everyone agrees with Machiavelli's harsh realism. Critics argue that his philosophy encourages cynicism and distrust. They worry that adopting a Machiavellian mindset leads people to see the world only as a battlefield, stripping away compassion and empathy. This is a valid concern, because unchecked ruthlessness can poison relationships and communities. Another limitation is that not every situation calls for Machiavellian tactics. In personal relationships, excessive calculation can feel manipulative and cold. In creative fields, being overly strategic may stifle authenticity. The mentality monster mindset is powerful, but it must be applied with wisdom. The video acknowledges this indirectly by focusing on strength, not cruelty. It doesn't glorify manipulation but insists on resilience. By recognizing the criticisms, we see that Machiavelli's lessons are not absolute truths, but tools. Like any tool, they can build or destroy depending on how they are used. Conclusion. At its core, this video will create a mentality monster. Machiavelli is not about glorifying manipulation or ruthlessness. It's about facing reality with open eyes. Life is not fair, people are not always kind, and opportunities don't fall into your lap. To thrive, you must be prepared. You must cultivate discipline, adaptability, emotional control, and the ability to project strength even when under pressure. Machiavelli's principles, reframed for modern life, provide a blueprint for building this toughness. By embracing fear over love in the form of respect, mastering perception as reality, and adapting relentlessly, anyone can develop the unshakable mindset of a mentality monster. This doesn't mean abandoning ethics or compassion. It means refusing to be naive. The challenge then is simple. Will you drift through life waiting for fairness, or will you sharpen your mind into a weapon? A mentality monster doesn't hope for the best. They prepare for the worst and thrive regardless. The choice is yours.